Are you there?
I wonder what I played with. I've still got my headphones on. I really wondered what intro I played with. Hi, Kerry. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Yes, and I'm so looking forward to this conversation because I know it's going to be such a good one. So, okay, so anybody who remember Kerry Rudman from our summit will know that she is our brain expert, understanding really how the brain works and how much of influence all the trauma in our life has on our brain and how we can change it. So I think that's a good place to start to understand that we actually are carrying the trauma with us.
Sure. I've seen it so much lately. I spent a couple of hours at Home Affairs yesterday and a couple of hours in the driving license department today. So it's amazing to see how short people's fuses are and how, like, one lady cuts into the queue and how people react to it. Some people want to fight her, some people go into freeze and they don't say anything, but they can't figure out what's going on. And I was watching people's traumas playing out in their reactions to stuff happening around them because you wait for so long that all the defenses and things that you had up disappear and you get to see people's traumas start seeping through. It was quite amazing. I
Yeah,
really enjoyed that.
I posted something onto Facebook this week where I said last week that we all know we're getting so healthy that we can't even get angry at other people anymore because we understand way too much. It sounds like that is what you're saying. And I had such a lot of reaction on it because it is really like that, that you can start
Yeah,
seeing
yeah,
people's dramas play out. Um,
yeah,
I thought you were going to
absolutely.
say that home affairs traumatized you and you're going to wear a scar for the rest of your life because that's entirely possible.
Look, people need brain training after they go to Home Affairs. There's no doubt
Yes,
about it.
yes. Okay,
I was
let's
also going to say, just from COVID, what's been quite amazing, we all know that our childhood traumas are going to play the biggest role. They're going to define your perceptions and your choices and everything that you do for the rest of your life.
yeah.
But what I've noticed is COVID's a whole other ball game because people have their own childhood traumas, but they also the kids are picking up from the parents. Parents are very worried right now. They're anxious, they're depressed. They, even what are we over 2 years into this already? But people are still nervous to be around others. Children are having social anxiety. There's so much anxiety going on at the moment. We've seen children as young as 8 years of age with crippling anxiety, and kids who are so depressed, they're suicidal. They're 10, 11 years old and they're suicidal. It's horrific how much COVID has affected us. And I don't think people, we're all looking at how it's affecting us economically and health wise, but mental health is so, so important. With all the technology that we've been through and how much medicine has advanced in the last 50 years, we are now sicker than we've ever been in history. They're expecting that Alzheimer's is going to increase by 200% in the next 50 years. I mean, we're in the wrong place. We're doing stuff very, very wrong at the moment.
I can't agree with you more. We are doing things very, very wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think if we have conversations where we step into self-empowerment and more awareness and um, more challenging the status quo and not just accepting that this is how it is. This is how we were brought up. This is our views. These are our outlooks. But we don't go, it's written in stone and it has to be there. And we become more aware of our own power in our own lives because you
Yeah,
can't change the whole world. But if every one of us start becoming more aware in our own lives and start challenging what is going around inside us, around us, our reactions to it. It's
absolutely.
that one
And I
single
also,
thing,
sorry,
self-empowerment.
absolutely. And I think that before we had information like neurofeedback, where we could actually look at the patterns, we would get stuck in certain patterns from our childhood. And you never look at it to go, well, why do I react in this way? Why do I hold onto stuff and never speak up for myself or get too reactionary, whatever it is. We don't look at that, and you don't realize that how easy it is to actually change something like that. When you start balancing your brain, you're able to look at the external stimulus or stress that irritates you or frustrates you or oversteps a boundary, and deal with it differently to the conditioning, the way you've always done it. There is definitely another way, but we have to help our brain out, because your brain's only job in the world is survival. And once it's hardwired into these patterns, it needs something to say, it's okay, it's 40 years later, you can let this go. You don't have to freeze. You can stand up for yourself. You can say no, and it's going to be safe. It'll be okay. Yeah.
Love that. I've said something very similar to somebody a little while ago, half an hour ago. So I love that you said it. So, Kerry, before I start, I share my slides, which are, of course, from the book that we have co-authored, Talk, Trust, Feel, which is what this is all about, so that we can learn how to talk and how to trust and how to experience our feelings as adults in a safe way. And neurofeedback is one of the ones that helps us to get to the place where our brain is rewired to work better. But I want you to give us a very short. Don't have a long explanation, please, because I've got 3 slides here of your words that I want to share, and I'm so excited to talk to you about this. So keep it short.
Okay. So you want an explanation of the neurofeedback on those traumas?
Just, there are people watching who has no clue what neurofeedback is. Nothing.
Okay.
So you've
So
got a book.
really, what we do is we use EEG electrodes that we put on different spots on your head. It's a little bit like taking a photo of your brain. We can see pathways, neural pathways in your head, and where your brain goes to find information. So if your brain goes a long way around to retrieve any information, we call it an imbalance. Your brain can go a long way around to find names, and you cannot remember that actress's name, and 2 minutes later you recall it. It's just that your brain's going a long way around. The pathways are rewired differently. So it takes longer to retrieve that info, or maths, or sequencing, or tasks. We look at stress, trauma, anxiety, depression markers. We see how happy you are internally. And then we look at traumas throughout your life. We can pinpoint ages that you've have experienced those traumas, and then the coping strategies that it throws you into. And we look at other things like your midline. Can you make a decision really quickly, or do you go backwards and forwards? Does your brain lock into not letting go of a pattern? Like you have to have chocolate every night, or you smoke, or you need to go to gym every day, or work too hard. Whatever it is, it can even lock into headaches and migraines and illness. So we look at the whole picture of how your brain is functioning. And from that, we work out a program where we get your brain to hear itself in real time. Your brain, basically the electrodes pick up the activity in your head, and then you hear it in sound, but you hear it in 1/10,000th of a second. And because it's so quick, it's really like your brain is seeing itself in a mirror. We give your brain certain reward and inhibit sounds to coerce your brain to use the simpler pattern. But what's great about neurofeedback is your brain will never take that information on and use it straight away. It will test everything. So I always say it's like you've learned to stand on one leg. If we show your brain what balanced is, to stand on both, your brain will still go check one leg again before it takes on balanced. It will make sure that the pathway makes sense. And in all the training we've ever done, when we do a remap, no brain ever overbalances. It always balances perfectly, 100% exactly how it should. It's never gone the wrong way, which is incredible that your brain is that clever. It knows what balance should be.
Yeah, I find it so fascinating because I've seen the maps of people that I've been working with, and I already know before the time what the ages are at which they had the trauma. And then the brain map came back, and you mean you didn't have this history of months and years, but I've been working with them. And so you didn't know, nobody could tell the machine they had trauma at this age and that age and that age. The machine actually picked it up by itself. It's like miraculous. And I want everybody who can do it to do this, because it is just it's so cutting edge and so the most effective method for us to rewire our brains, because otherwise we
And
can
it's
do
so
it.
incredible that every single thing you go through tells a story in your brain. It leaves a pathway that tells us a story. So we can read things like the age you went through that trauma, because your brain leaves a pattern. In certain ages, you're more dominant in certain frequencies. That's how we pick up the age. But it's fascinating that your brain can do that.
I would love to see how my brain have done it, because I've done it so on purpose. I've done the lazy eights and the remedial training of my brain, and then I did a lot of lumosity brain training, which is also brain training. So I did years of it before I got back to functioning. Before my midline was not preventing me from integrating left brain and right brain. So
Right.
from the post-traumatic stress disorder, because I'm like skipping without telling the story. And I would love to see how my brain have managed to tell a story of how I, for years and years and years, did what your machine does in a few weeks.
Absolutely. And what we
And
have noticed is even when people
compromise.
do a lot of work, the almost like the scarring, the pathway still shows us those ages, even though you've done a lot of other work, we'll still pick it up.
And we do want to talk about that migraine story, because I'm tired of having migraines for everything under the sun.
Yes,
Because
we
like
have to
you say,
have to.
your brain, it becomes your brain's go-to pathway, because it's once decided that this is what it has to do.
Well, I kind of feel like when you have a headache or a migraine, we normally call it a rebound effect, that your brain will take in a certain amount of stress and take it until eventually it rebounds with a headache. It's your body screaming at you to tell you to stop stressing. And it's the only way that you're going to listen. So a lot of the times when I do the brain training with people, I get them to try and go inside their body and to create agreements with their body where we have agreements with everything else, but we don't with our body, to kind of say, okay, if I hit a certain stress level, is there another way you could show this to me? And most of the time people's bodies say, no, you won't listen to me. That's why I give you the migraine, because now you have to listen. So you have to do baby steps and barter slowly and go, okay, I promise, if you show me in this way and I pay attention, can we then renegotiate? And then you've got to start paying attention to your body and listening.
I love that. Otukara Kletka, who's one of our other authors, has got a whole chapter about the body and how we don't listen to it. And she calls it soldiering the body. We soldier our body. We are literally in a war against our body instead of working with
I
our
love that.
body, which is so much
Yeah.
the same kind of message. And then we keep on going back to, it's the trauma that we experience that is largely responsible for us soldiering our body.
Yes, and self-sabotaging as well. We do that so much. And that's all from our traumas and our beliefs.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me get to the first slide, because I'm so excited to talk to you about this. I've got 3 slides. So I don't know, we either going to have to do 2 episodes or we're going to talk very fast. Oh, there, it's gone a bit. There. Okay, my body decided to scream at me to stop by making me ill, which is exactly what we are talking about. Oh, there it comes again. Okay, which is
Absolutely.
exactly what we are talking about now. And
Yeah.
as I read those words, and you were sick, right? You got
Yeah.
to a stage where you were struggling to function.
Absolutely. I was put in the emergency room a few times. There were 3 incidents where I almost died. And what happened is the doctors gave me so much cortisone that I eventually became allergic to the cortisone. So they saw that I was getting worse, so they gave me more. And I got to a point where I just thought, okay, well, I really am going to die now, so I'm going to just stop all the medication. And the minute I stopped, I got better. And then the doctors realized they were killing me. They were giving me so much medication that they were doing the harm. But definitely, I got to that point because I was over stressed. I was traveling between every province that we have doing the brain training myself. I hadn't branched out or franchised at that point. I had a 2-year-old. It was all just too much. And it was the only way my body could actually make me stop. Again, I wasn't listening. I didn't know how to at that point.
Now, I'm Overachievers Anonymous, getting the cue, they're enjoying the waiting list for brain harmonics, because this is what we do. This is what we
I
do to
love it.
ourselves. Okay. So, all right. So we want to be aware that our body will tell us, and then that paths are engraved in our brain.
Absolutely.
That soldiering is actually becomes the hard things that we are doing to ourselves become the go-to thing that the brain is going to do.
Absolutely.
And
Your
we can
brain becomes hardwired into that pattern, and your brain's only job in the world is survival. So if your brain has to help you to survive with that, it's going to find coping strategies. And that becomes your normal. I always think that we start off over here as normal, and then you experience a stressor, and then another one, and then another one, and then this becomes normal. And it's just totally not.
yes, every
Brain
level
training will take all that
is normal.
away. It'll bring you back to what normal used to be. We need to stop with all the coping strategies because we are exhausting ourselves completely.
Okay, so there's a question I want to ask you. I'm still back at that one. There's a question I want to ask you, but I'm going to try and remember it for the end. So let me go to the next slide, because this is a big one. You don't even know what you're talking about. The first 7 years of our lives determine every belief, value, and experience. And we will then automatically use those beliefs for the rest of our life, even though we are adults now, and we can logically tell ourselves that this is not true, and we want to create solid, reliable relationships. The irony is that the hardwiring just keeps recreating the exact same thing that your brain was trying to protect yourself from. So I think we want to maybe give an example here. If anybody's got questions, remember you can post them in the questions. We'll come back. We'll stop in between. I don't see any questions now. So if you have questions, stop and we'll answer them and we'll carry on. Okay,
so this is something that I believe fundamentally, and I think that throughout any society, any gender, any race, it doesn't matter what it is, we all have this. So whatever it is that we have created from, even though we keep saying, okay, I'm in this place and things are great, and we can use affirmations or visualization or boards or whatever it is, because we are coming from the place of lack in some way, we actually focusing on that lack. So that's why we keep recreating, because we focus on the lack to create the good thing. So we're not focusing on the good thing, we're actually focusing on the lack somewhere in our deep unconscious. So we keep recreating that same lack pattern. I'm calling it lack, it might be the wrong word. I'm just trying to think of a better word, but it's something it's a place where something hasn't worked very well for us. It could be a feeling of not being good enough, or a feeling of not being deserving enough, or whatever it
let me give
is.
you an example. Then you can say to me if it works. So
Yeah.
A young girl's father leaves the family. They're getting divorced, and her father is leaving her. Oh, you've got a story like, no, you don't. Yes, that's your story, isn't it? It's like really your story.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what you do is, now you don't trust all men. So, I mean, you can have various different beliefs, but I'm going to go with this one.
Yes.
So you don't trust all men. And because your brain keeps on telling you that you will be left, you try extra hard in the relationship. You over control. You are jealous. You are having these fear reactions, which are lack reactions. I don't believe in my ability to have a man love me because my father left me. Men can't be
And I
trusted.
think you actually choose men who will not be there for you in some way.
Yeah.
So you're actually setting it up before you've even gone into it, that it's going to pan out the way that you know, because your subconscious needs to always know how things are going to be. So it's going to plan to recreate it the way it knows, because that's what's familiar. And what happens in your brain is that exact incident we're talking about will throw your brain into freeze mode. So freeze means you're never going to be able to communicate correctly because it's too scary. You don't like confrontation. You don't like threats. You don't want to be clear about your boundaries. So now you want
Especially
to
with
have
men,
this.
so in this case,
Sorry.
especially with men, because men will
Yep.
leave you.
Exactly. So now, obviously, they're going to leave you when you're not communicating correctly, because they don't know when they're overstepping boundaries or why, because you can't be clear about it. So freeze is going to keep holding you in that pattern, and you are not going to say what you need to say, and you're not going to be clear about communication. So you're setting that pattern up over and over again, and then you'll find the next man that you're going to do it right with them. But when it comes down to things being wrong, to try and communicate about that clearly is going to be hard, and it just keeps it's cycling.
And then you think my pattern is that I go for men who are assholes, but what really is your pattern is that you can't communicate.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
We've got a question. I want to go quickly check. People, remember, keep on giving us those hearts, because the more you give us hearts.
Oh, like the hearts.
Hi, Jane. I'm not sure if I should share it. Not edited enough. Let's go. There we go. No, just
Yes, Jane, yes. Absolutely.
okay. But this, you really do calm the brain down on steroids. You like really, but what you're doing is helping it. I know, because I do this brain training with people day in and day out in a cognitive way. And I start using a new pathway, say the affirmations, understand what it's all about, very cognitively. But this takes months and years and lots of living the new way. And what you do is you help it to calm down way
Quickly,
faster.
really quickly. I can tell you that as because we run a franchise with all the franchisees, we're supposed to brain train ourselves once a year. So we do that so we can feel what it's like to be a client again, remember how to close the door quietly or whatever it is. But we also need to be healthy. And I realized a little while ago that I haven't trained myself since before COVID, and my stress levels were quite high. So what I was explaining to my husband the other day, because I started my training last Friday, the one thing is when my son gets upset with certain things, my immediate response from my upbringing is I have to fix things. I've got to solve them quickly because I can't have anybody feeling conflict around me. And what I felt was a feeling inside me, and I can only explain it as anxiety because it's a feeling that comes up in my body where I get so anxious and I need to sort things out quickly. And I've only done 6 hours of brain training on myself. That feeling is gone. Like I still feel a bit irritated by hearing it, but it's a cognitive thing. It's not a feeling in my body anymore. It just calmed it down completely. It was amazing to feel again. I really enjoyed that. And then the other thing, I've been monitoring my sleep. We got 2 puppies that have messed with our sleep completely. And in the last month, I haven't had more than an hour's deep sleep in the last month. And within 3 hours of brain training, my deep sleep went up to just under 3 hours. Just 3 hours of training. So it really is quick. It does calm things down amazingly.
Okay, I'm going to ask you more practical questions when we're done with the rest, because I actually want people to put their questions, because I'm sure if I have questions, other people have got questions too. But I want to ask you a question about the sleeping specifically. Just remind me. Now, what am I doing now? I don't know what I'm doing now. Okay, here. Okay, so wait, I want to go back to this one. I'm not done with this one. Okay, so now this is the thing that I want to just stick with. The irony is that the hardwiring just keeps you recreating the exact same thing that your brain was trying to protect you from. So I think that that's really what we don't understand. That it's like you say, the brain wants to keep you alive. Its main job is make sure that you will remember to breathe. It was like breathe. Don't pay attention to the pain inside you. And so
Absolutely.
all of this, everything just happens so subconsciously. We don't do anything on purpose. It's just like this hardwired. It's not even like an outlet. It's more like an instinct.
Yeah. So using the example of abandonment, people will experience abandonment over and over again, and it won't only be from a male. It can be from friends, co-workers, it doesn't matter. But they get to a point where they keep saying, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep losing people? And it really is that, I don't know, are you attracted to those people who are going to leave? Or I don't know how it works, but over and over again, you keep re-experiencing that same trauma. People who are in extreme fight or flight are always in situations where something will go wrong and they will snap and they'll get aggressive or angry. And they always seem to be in those situations. So somebody who's in freeze will look at them and think, why are you always in something like that? Why does that happen to you? They're recreating it over and over again. It's amazing.
So, now that's what I want to talk a little bit more about, because and in your chapter you've spoken a lot about freeze, more than fight and flight. I think a lot of people recognize fight and flight.
Yeah.
It's quite obvious to us when we go into fight mode, and it's quite obvious when we go into flight mode.
Yes.
Yeah, it's called withdrawal. It's when pulling back. When after you stop running, when you pull back. So, but the freeze part, we are really talking to people that find it incredibly difficult to have these difficult conversations, to have the conversations that will make our life better. Because whenever we can actually voice what's not working for us, we have the power to make things easier for ourselves, to change the direction of our life. But that one superhuman or super adult right and skill that we are supposed to have, if you freeze, you are too scared to use it.
Exactly. So I always say to
Fearful.
people who come in for an assessment who have fight or flight that it's great for them. It's just not good for the people around them, but they can stand up for themselves. Their boundaries are great. Freeze, if you tell somebody who's in freeze to go out and set up a boundary, they'll agree with you. They'll say, okay. And when it comes time to do it, they can't. It's so uncomfortable in your body. It feels absolutely horrific. I know that's because the chapter was about freeze because that's where I came from. So it's what I know. And I used to need to have a fight with somebody about something. I would plan it. I would plan everything I would say, everything the other person would say back to me, how I would counter that. You plan everything. You think about it for 4 or 5 days in a row. And then when you're ready for it, and the person says one thing that wasn't in your plan, you're completely thrown and you're back in freeze again. And then you walk away and you've forgotten half the things you were going to say. You didn't get it out. And your brain is trying
No,
to
those
protect you
ones.
all the time.
Yeah, those ones where your mind literally goes blank. Whatever you have been prepared, your mind, there's
Absolutely.
nothing in it.
And
And
kids will
you can
say
be
to me
right.
that kids will say to me that they'll learn for exams. They know all the work. They'll walk into the exam and they can't think of any answer. The minute they stand up and they walk out the room, they know all the answers again. That freeze debilitates you completely and it's not logical. You can't get the stuff out, and your brain's trying to say to you, if you say these things to this other person, you could lose another person. So don't, it tries to stop you. And it's a coping strategy. You might actually hate that person and think they're not really good in my life. I don't need them. But you still can't say the stuff out loud there and then in the
But you
heat
know
of the moment.
what's interesting to me, and I don't know if there's other people like that. For when I was younger, when I was a child and a young adult, my go-to place was freeze. I only managed to move to fight much later. It wasn't
As you,
always like that. Did you see that in other people too?
in varying degrees. So some people are just stuck in freeze their whole entire life. They just it's debilitating. And they go through, you meet them when they're much older and they had incredible business ideas or plans that they wanted to put into motion and they just can't do it because freeze keeps telling you that it's not safe. I have some people with some freeze and then some fight or flight and then maybe back to freeze. So it depends on the variations of it. But I do also think that age helps. I know that when I turned 40, I was much more able to stand up for myself. When I turned 50, even more. So I think as we get older, we definitely get more confidence to say what it is that we want to say.
I don't think in my case it was confidence. I had, actually, until we talked about this, I have forgotten that I was like that as a child. That I would know exactly what I want to say. And when I started speaking, a few sentences in, and if anybody, like you say, start talking to you, and you now have to think on your feet. I could not think on my feet. I could not. I was not able to do that. It was impossible. And I think my fight and flight was really being triggered by being inside a codependent relationship.
Yeah.
Something in that triggered me into fight and flight. And because and wasn't confidence. Confidence came much later. It was literally something, I think, from desperation that I have to fight for this.
It could be that something made you really angry. And that anger can pull you into the fight or flight, and fight or flight pulls you out of freeze. So now you're able to say more.
Yes. And your brain then likes it. It likes to be out of freeze. It feels better to the brain, so then it gets stuck in that pattern. Is that
Yes, look,
the
balance is always the best thing. So you don't want to be completely in fight or flight or completely in freeze.
yeah.
So a bit of both does help, but also it depends on the level. So when we do an assessment, we can see how far into fight or flight you are. If it's
Mm.
very imbalanced in fight or flight, we just want to smooth that out so that you're not too reactionary and you're not too angry or irritable. We can calm it down a lot.
It feels wonderful not to be in fight and flight anymore. It's wonderful, completely wonderful. We don't have to stay there stuck. So,
I
okay, so
love
let's go.
being in fight or flight more than being in freeze, I must say. Being in
I
freeze for
love.
me and not being able to talk about and communicate and have those boundaries with people was very, very hard. Where I think fight or flight allowed me to be able to establish boundaries correctly.
I understand that because in your chapter you also talked about how people, how you, I think it was you that you talked about how you sort of used the adrenaline from being under pressure, and it was like so me. I used to say, I used to be terribly lazy, really, really lazy. Nobody who knows me now is going to believe me. I was the laziest child you've ever seen, and I would not start anything. And whenever I had to do something, it was last minute. And then I would say, "Where's my adrenaline? I'm waiting for my adrenaline. My adrenaline is going to kick in any moment, and then I'm
I
going to
need
have
that pressure.
superpower." So I know exactly what you're saying, it, and then it becomes a pattern. And then I sort of think, like you said,
Yeah,
it became this pattern of if I want to achieve something, I have to have the pressure. I have to put that pressure
yeah.
on myself so that I will do this because my belief is I'm so lazy that I can only do this when I have adrenaline firing me up. It's like
Well, it's
it's
also all about
amazing.
hormones because your brain is all the neurochemistry. So if your brain is imbalanced, your neurochemistry is imbalanced. If you
Mm.
can find a way to pump adrenaline through your body gets used to that and your body loves it. So it's now not going to perform unless it can feel it. It's going to wait for you to give it what it needs and what feels good to get you into motion.
I think I've just got an enormous moment here. I'm the one who falls on too many things always. Right? Makes total sense. Big aha moment. Let me see there in the comments. Let's see. Image. Why would my brain feel a need to recreate what it is trying to protect me from? It's just a form of healing.
So I don't think it's healing. I think it's what it knows. So exactly what we were saying now, when your brain gets used to that adrenaline and it now doesn't want to cope or do anything without that adrenaline. The trauma is something that your brain's used to. It knows that trauma, it knows how to anticipate the feeling of it. So you recreate it because it's what's known. So it's almost as terrible as it is, you don't want to re experience that. It's what your brain understands and can predict and can judge from. So it recreates it because it's not something foreign or new. And maybe our brain is also lazy that it doesn't want to learn how to deal with a new trauma that's not something consistent. So it recreates what it knows because it's easier.
Makes sense. Okay, let's go to the next one. Boundaries versus barriers. Oh my, how much do I love this? People who are stuck in freeze mode put barriers up between themselves and the person who irritates you instead of going into any kind of confrontation. The other person knows that they did something wrong, but they have no idea what. So this is specifically about people in freeze mode, that you will put
Yeah,
that barriers up.
absolutely. So my favorite story, my husband and I were together about 22 years ago before we got back together and got married. And I was completely in freeze then. So whenever I was upset with him, I used to go and lock myself in the bathroom and have my cry in the bathroom. And he would stand outside the door and call me and try and talk to me. And I couldn't. I would just stay in the bathroom until I was completely okay and composed, and I'd come out later. And he didn't know what was going on. I never communicated it clearly to him. All he knew is that, oh, something's wrong. I've done something wrong. I'm in trouble here. But he didn't know what. And I found that over and over afterwards with clients is the barrier is so easy to put up. You just put this imaginary wall up and you say, I'm never going to speak to that person again. Because Free says it's so uncomfortable to go and speak to them and then bring it up and confront it, and you make all those excuses. Oh, I don't need to go there. That'll just happen again. So I'd rather just not be their friend. Really, if you could use that boundary correctly, that person would know where that line is, how far they can push you, or what they can ask from you, or take from you, and then you would be able to have a better friendship. So absolutely, boundaries are always going to work better for everybody in the long run. But when you're in freeze, it's just so hard to establish them.
We are, as a people, we are actually really, really uncomfortable. We've got so many uncomfortableness in ourselves, and we are making do, and we don't understand how many other people, like you say, you go to home affairs and you just watch all these things play out in front of you.
Yeah.
We don't understand how many other people are walking around with us unhealed wounds, like 70,
Yes.
80% at least, right?
Absolutely.
And
I think
walking with
society teaches us to be polite. So we think, well,
yes,
you can't say anything to the other person. This person who cut in line at Home Affairs, some people did say stuff to them, and some people were like, no, you can't. Let's just leave it. It'll just be a few minutes longer. Let's not go there. So you're watching who keeps the peace because it's the norm, and you're watching who doesn't care because that's not okay. It's quite incredible.
yeah. I, I, we are also trained to fit in because we just want to be accepted. Being accepted is such a core need for us that we all walk out and we try and blend in and be accepted and be, you know, um, some of us just want to blend in and disappear, and some of us actually have a need for people to see us. So we're a curious mix of hurts that we don't even know about that we are carrying with us, and
Yeah.
all these reactions, and that we're not even halfway aware of it.
There's one that really seems to be coming up quite a lot at the moment, and I think it's very upsetting, is that men are taught that they shouldn't cry and they should suck it up and they should be brave and they need to cope and support the family and there are men who are really struggling and they don't ask for help and they don't talk about it. And a personal friend of mine committed suicide recently, where nobody knew that anything was wrong. And what was interesting for me is his funeral. There were so many people at the funeral, and all of them kept saying, if I only knew, if he had spoken, if he had told us, I would have helped. I would have. Everybody was there and they would have been open, but men don't talk. They don't say that there's a problem. So they just get to a point where they don't know how else to cope. And they're either going into depression, and a lot of people are going through things like suicide. It's horrific. They need to be allowed to talk and taught from little that it's okay. It's okay to cry or be upset. Throw a
You
tantrum. It's
know,
okay.
yeah, Philip, I think when I was falling apart, I was like literally, I was in helpless and hopeless for 2 years, and I think I told one person, what was really going on with me. Everybody else, hello, welcome, come in, how are you? Not my heart is breaking and I don't know what to do anymore. And I'm at the end of my rope and I am so desperately unhappy. And nothing that I've tried for so many years, I've tried. And I'm so tired. I mean, that was what was really going on inside me. But yeah, all I showed to the world was, I'm fine. How are you? Yeah, let me put some attention on you so we don't talk about me. And yeah.
Right. I'm okay. I'm
That,
okay. Just don't ask. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, just like that. And I I am very strong and I am very together, but I completely fell apart. And my main thing in my head was just look okay. Just look okay. That's your job. Look okay.
And the great thing is that you did find ways to get through it, as hard as it was. But how much better would it have been if you had real support going through it and being allowed to go through it, but with people who really understand? It would have been
Yeah.
so much more healthy.
But if you have got that big wall up, if that wall is your safety, if your
Yeah.
brain knows it has to put a wall up, you know,
Yeah,
because you are in some sort of huge danger if you don't. If you talk and if you trust and if you feel you are in huge danger, then that is your training. You don't know to ask for help. You don't know. You don't know
absolutely.
how easy it is to get help from the most unlikely people around you
Mm,
and just support.
absolutely. And there's an amazing thing that I have to tell you that happens in your brain when you go through a trauma, and you can't deal with it at the time of it happening, and you can be any age. What happens is your brain takes a lot of the frequency called alpha and it starts padding it all the way through the middle of your head, down your midline.
Mm,
So it protects you from dealing with the trauma completely because you still have to carry on with your life. You have to eat, you have to work, you have to, if you're young, you have to go to school, whatever it is. And what happens is a couple of years later, 20, 30, 40 years later, as you age, that alpha starts lowering. It's called age-related cognitive decline. And what happens is you then re-experience that trauma as pain, physical pain in your body. So it's nature's way of saying, look, you can't deal with this mentally right now. So I'll give it back to
mm,
you in your body in a couple of years. And then you will have to deal with it in some way. You're just not dealing with it in the original way, form that it arrived in.
wow.
It's such a clever
That's
design.
very big. Yeah, that's very big. Um,
Yeah,
and you will tend to suppress the pain if you don't have adequate support. And you will not have adequate
absolutely.
support if you never learn to trust.
Yeah. And I think in our society right now, especially in the workplace, people are going through a lot in the workplace and they will not talk to their colleagues. They will not speak to their boss. They have to seem like they're okay and they've got this and they don't want to lose their job. So they're doing exactly that. They're putting on a brave face. They're not
Mm,
talking about it to anybody around them. They have to seem like they're okay.
mm.
It's not healthy.
Let me check our next comment. All right, there we go. A sense of home comfort. Exactly, Mitch. That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Virginia. Glad you can watch. And thank you guys for all the hearts there. I really appreciate that. Nice to see
Thank
you
you.
guys. Aladia, hi. Hi, Lata. Hi, Shelly. Nice to see you guys. Okay. Anybody else have got any questions? I still want to ask that sleep question. I'm sure there are more people who want to know about the sleep thing. Anybody else have any questions? Put them in. We are going to be finishing soon, so I don't want to finish before we've got all your questions answered. Okay, so now the sleep thing. Like, okay, first of all, so we've got this big problem, right? You have to sleep to be able to function because if you don't sleep, you can't function. You stop
Absolutely.
functioning. And but because of whatever is going on in your life, you can't sleep. But you can't sleep, and then you can't function. And because you can't function, you can. It's vicious. It's a vicious circle.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about what the brain is, what's going on inside the
Okay.
brain. The sleep thing.
So, literally, it's a coping strategy again. I have a client who has a traumatic brain injury right now. I've had clients who have cancer, lots of long-term illnesses. What happens when you have a long-term illness? You just think, if I could really, really sleep, I would heal and then I'd get better. But what happens is the longer you're sick and the more medication you're on, the more your sleep quality deteriorates. So you can't sleep. And it's your brain's way of saying, look, if I let you sleep right now, you're going to die. So I'm going to make sure you're up every 3 hours so I can make sure that you're going to survive. But you cannot rest, repair, or digest if you don't sleep. So you're right, it is a vicious circle. And the more medication we take, the more sleeping tablets we take, the worse your sleep quality becomes, and the more you have to increase that medication. So you will never get to sleep properly if you are taking sleeping tablets or long-term medication. With the brain training, what we do is we get your brain to get the sleep back to the back of your head again, so that when you close your eyes, you can actually fall asleep. Because what most people do is they will do an activity to fall asleep. Most people have a lot of sleep sitting in the front of their head. So when they're focusing, they get tired. If they're watching TV or reading a book or looking at Facebook, they're going to get tired to go to sleep. So they need that tool to fall asleep. It's another coping strategy, but it's not the right way to do things. We should be able to turn the light off and close our eyes and go to sleep. The quality of sleep is a huge problem at the moment because if you are battling to fall asleep or you're waking up often, what happens is throughout the night you need to go through the sleep cycles. And it takes a while to drop into the deep sleep cycle. So if you have woken up in 2 hours' time, you might have dropped into deep sleep, but for maybe 11, 12 minutes, and then you're out of it again. So you're awake, you go to the loo, you start thinking about the world, and then you have to drop down again into light sleep and then eventually into deep sleep. So at the end of when you wake up, you haven't been through the right REM cycles. So even though you think you've got 6, 7 hours sleep, you should be okay, you're not rested. So the quality is really important.
My story with the sleep, and I wonder if brain training works for something like this, as when I was about 10, two traumatic things happened in my life. One I didn't even register as traumatic. My mother said to me that if she dies that night, that this is where the papers are, and I must just remember that. So I didn't sleep. I just waited until I passed out. And in more or less the same time, a friend of ours, one of my school friends, their house a few blocks from us, burned completely down. So we woke up one Sunday morning and the house was gone. And so we walked there when I looked at it, and it happened in the night. And somehow my brain connected that. So to the effect that even now, that I'm still like, whoa, awake. If I smell smoke in the middle of the night, I'm like, wow, I need to go check. But
Yeah.
then I remember I was, even when I was about 12 years old, I had to do yoga, breathing exercises, relaxing my entire head from my head down to my toes in order to fall asleep. I couldn't fall asleep. I had to do that. And eventually sleeping pills, and eventually I managed to get off it by going to a Chinese acupuncturist, and she helped me get off it. But I never made the connection, ever made the connection. And then when my mother was actually dying, and I'm sleeping like a baby, and my mother is actually dying, I woke up like this, and suddenly I remembered. That is why I was not sleeping my entire life. The last time I slept like that was before I was 10 years old, and I had to stay awake in case my mother died that night. Yeah. So, my brain didn't even register it, and I never ever remembered it until my mother actually was dying. So, that's just the kind of thing that our brain does.
Yes, absolutely. And if you think that most of the beliefs that we have are developed between the age of 0 and 7, we're not logical at that age at
Nothing.
all. And we might see a certain scenario going on between our parents and assume something, but we don't really know the context of why they were behaving in that way. It's maybe 4 or 5 years old, but that becomes a core belief based on just your perception of what you saw at the time. It's crazy.
Yeah.
We're basically little toddlers running around as adults trying to
Yes,
make decisions in the world.
that's what I say. The 7-year-old is driving the car, and it's time for us to say, no, this is not working for me anymore. I want to drive that car now. You
I
say, no,
like
no.
it.
Okay, here's a good one. Thanks, Virginia, for your question. My sister went through abuse in her marriage, and I find she relives it often. Trauma of abuse, what would you suggest she does or takes?
So I would obviously recommend neurofeedback, because that trauma is very real, and it can be physical, emotional, sexual. It can be any trauma that you've been through. It can. What happens is it's thrown your brain into fight or flight, and until something says to your brain, it's okay to let that go, you will relive it. It sounds like she could be experiencing some post-traumatic stress as well around it. And the only way to really calm that down quickly that I know of is neurofeedback. There are other ways,
Yeah,
definitely, but this is quick.
yeah,
Her
I
brain needs to
will.
see the state that
Yeah,
it's in order to drop it.
I will come in from the other ways, and then in the end, I'm always going to say, if you can afford it, do neurofeedback. So for me, because this is my job. This is I am an expert in dealing with unresolved childhood trauma and adult trauma, any trauma. That's why I love what you do, because you're an extra tool. But so anybody can do tapping. So tapping is something that you can look up videos, Nick Ortner trauma. You can look up sexual abuse. You can look it up and you can start doing trauma. The first thing is always talk therapy, because we tend to suppress it, and you don't want to suppress it, because then it becomes hardwired. Then a trauma becomes post-traumatic stress disorder. So
Yeah.
you want to talk through it. You want to journal through it. You want to express it instead of suppressing it. But you don't want to express the feelings of how you felt at the moment, because that's your trigger to put you in post-traumatic stress disorder. Nobody knows this. I mean, it's just like nobody tells you that. If you go to a psychologist and they say to you, how did you feel, which is the go-to phrase, and you try and explain to them how you felt, you will re-traumatize yourself over and over and over again. And psychologist doesn't know this. I mean, I've experienced this. That is why I know this. I know that's what put me into post-traumatic stress disorder again and again and again for a very long time. So
you're reinforcing the trauma by talking about the trauma all the time, the feeling of it.
because
You're reinforcing the feeling.
it's the feelings you experience that is traumatizing you. It's not the
Yeah.
act. It's what Jess Ford said when she was raped by those guys and her father had to watch. And she takes a 100 rand note and she put it up and she says, this is a 100 rand note. And then she crumples it. And then she says, this is still a 100 rand note. And I wasn't going to let those guys take my value from me. So the act doesn't have to take it. It's your interpretation from it. So that feelings you expressed while it was going on, that's your trauma trigger. So you don't want to repeat that over and over. You want to tell the story of it. And you want to tell it with somebody who's skilled so you can start to reframe it. And you want to just let it out so it becomes just your story. But you can, with tapping is very effective. And then there is the other brain connected training where are various in the EM, what's going on with my letters now? EMDS, what? I don't know. I've lost my letters now, so my brain is not working. So, but it really is where you work with a practitioner who is skilled to help you cement the changes in your brain with colors and sound and eye position, because that's a very specialized training that you can do. So that works. It works. It gets you out of post-traumatic stress disorder immediately. You may have to keep on reinforcing it, but it gets you out. A lot of grounding techniques can get you out of it because it's dissociation. What you are saying, your brain dissociate you from your pain so that you don't experience it and that. And so you want to try and get yourself back in your body so that you are back in charge again. So you can use a variety of these, and it's hard to find people who specialize in these things. And then we still have neurofeedback for anybody who can get to a center where it's offered, where it's not everywhere. That's why we've got to stress the other ones too. It's not everywhere. Not everybody can fly to Joburg or wherever it is being offered. And not everybody can afford it. It's not, unfortunately, not cheap. So, but if you
But
can,
there are specifics. So when we do an assessment on somebody, for instance, if they have post-traumatic stress, and they really need to calm that down, we can focus just on that. So there are people who come for an assessment and they say, oh, I don't really care about sleep or whatever. They just want to be able to focus because they're writing exams. We can tailor make a program to be specific for what the person's needs are. So we do the assessment to see what do we need to run to make sure that that happens for them. And then we're not looking at multiple hours. It depends on what the person needs and then their combination of imbalances. So we can
I
tailor
like
make
that.
it for you. And we also do let people pay the training off because that helps right now. And I wanted to say that we are arranging a trip to Durban very soon.
Excellent. That's excellent because I think we've got quite a
Yes,
few people from Durban watching. So that's great.
great.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and I mean, I'm definitely in because I'm tired of having migraines for every single thing in my life. I want to have that trauma trigger removed. I'm
Yeah,
over it. I'm ready to leave it behind. It's not mine anymore. I will.
great.
I just have to get my brain to catch up with me. Okay, let me go see if
Absolutely.
there's any more questions here. Okay, Kerry, will you go into the chat and go post your contact details? Okay,
Yes,
wait,
sure.
here. Well, um, Virginia, you can get a franchise, don't you? You can do
Yes,
franchise.
we are. Yes. So, Virginia, I'm going to put my email in the chat box. If you send me your details, I can send you an overview of the franchise, how it works, and we can chat from there.
And then can you go into Facebook also and just go put it there in the chat? Because this doesn't
Absolutely.
show up on Facebook. Yeah. So you will go for everyone. Okay. And
I'll also put our webpage on as well, because there's a lot of information on our webpage.
did you read that? I'm so happy there's somebody else who's as excited as I am about this. I would send everybody that I know if I could. And I mean, I've been pushing this for 10 years already, since the first time when I found out about it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to Virginia.
Fantastic.
I'm not going to show
Please
you.
contact me, Virginia.
Yeah, I'm not, Virginia, I'm not going to show your email address here because it is all over Facebook and YouTube and everywhere. So I'm going to ask you, Robert, to contact directly. Kelly, you can be contacted directly. You are going to comment on the Facebook page also. And when you do the Durban trip, you must also let me know, and I'll put it in my newsletter. For anybody who's not signed up to my newsletter,
So
you've also got a
it's
newsletter.
not
It's
me.
not a big.
It's not me coming. It's a lady called Lisa who's been with me for 12 years. She's absolutely divine. So she's going to be coming.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right. So any more questions from anybody here? Just remember, this chat disappears completely afterwards. So the only chat we will see is the one on Facebook. Right. So any more questions from anyone? I hope you guys have found it as fascinating. And for everyone who is coming into the replay, we also love you. We'll keep on asking those questions. We'll go back in and we'll go and look. If you ask something specifically of Kerry, just hashtag what? No, at Kerry. So that I don't know if you can do it if you're not friends. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Facebook's a little bit weird. So I'm not really sure if you can do that. And now remember also, and you guys want to really, I want to go back to this. I want to just show the image again, because there, you see, there's our book, Talk, Trust, Feel. It's fantastic. It is
Absolutely.
so good.
It's so
I'm
exciting.
so proud of it. I'm so proud of it. It's out on pre-order. And so this stuff, your stuff is in there. We've got, it's got the most amazing stuff. And there's a foreword by Karen Casey. So yeah. So it's like full of amazing stuff, and then a foreword by Karen. So it's like, wow. Everything about this is wow. I can't wait for it to be out of pre-order so that everybody can get it. Okay, so in the meantime, post your comments, share with other people. Please, please, please share. Facebook don't show everything to everybody anymore. And give us some love, please. We love it. I love those hearts. Make me very, very happy. And I'll see you next week for a Tiny Seeds. Thank you so very much, Kerry, for
Thank
coming.
you so much. Thank you. It's so lovely being so lovely chatting to you. Always.
I want to make sure that I actually got the right video here, because I don't know what I played just now. There we go. Okay. It's a little bit dated because it was the video that I made for the summit. So I maybe should do a little bit of an update on it. Right. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for staying with us all this time. Love you lots. Lots of love to you, Kate, and so much appreciation. I am
Thank you.
awe of what you do and the possibilities you offer for our people. Okay. Much love, everyone. See you next week.